It happened on a Thursday night, right after we closed the diner. I've worked there for almost 3 years, so late nights in the parking lot never really bothered me. I usually stay back a bit to help clean up, cash out the register, the usual. That night was nothing out of the ordinary, quiet, slow, and honestly, I was just looking forward to going home, taking a shower, and knocking out. I walked out the back door around 11:45 p.m., carrying my backpack and keys. Same routine as always. The lot was completely empty, except for my car, and what I thought was a delivery van parked a couple of spaces down. It was one of those plain white cargo vans, no logo, no windows on the sides, just sitting there with the engine running. No headlights on, no one around. That should have been my first red flag. I remember unlocking my car and immediately getting that weird feeling, like something was off, but I couldn't explain why. I didn't hear footsteps or voices, just the low rumble of that van's engine. I opened my door, tossed my bag in, and sat down. As soon as I clicked the lock on the inside, the van slowly pulled forward and stopped directly behind my car, blocking me in. It wasn't fast or aggressive, just intentional, deliberate. My stomach dropped. I froze for a second, thinking maybe it was just someone turning around, but it didn't move again. Just sat there, engine still running. No lights, no one got out. I couldn't see into the windshield because of the glare from the streetlights, but I knew someone was inside, watching. I didn't know what to do at first. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I kept my hand on the gear shift, but I couldn't reverse out. He was too close. I didn't want to open the door, didn't want to get out, so I just sat there gripping the steering wheel like an idiot, trying to think. I even looked around the lot again, hoping maybe someone else was there. Maybe another employee had come out late or something, but it was just me and that van. I couldn't even convince myself to turn the engine on right away. It was like if I moved too fast, it'd trigger something. I remember glancing at my phone in the cup holder, thinking I should call someone, but who do you even call for something like that? After maybe a minute, or what felt like 10, I finally grabbed my phone and texted my manager who was still inside. Just a quick, "Hey, are you still in the back? There's a van blocking me in." I hit send, and not even 5 seconds later, the van's driver's side door cracked open. Not all the way, just enough for someone to peek out. I couldn't see the person's face, but I swear I saw a hand on the edge of the door, just resting there, like they were waiting for me to react. I didn't. I just stared, frozen. Then the door shut again. That little motion, that tiny crack in the door, it made everything feel 10 times more threatening, like they wanted me to know they weren't in a rush. They had time. That's when I locked eyes with my rearview mirror and realized I couldn't see a license plate. Not in the front, not in the back. My blood went cold. I don't know why I hadn't noticed it before. I started to panic quietly, trying to stay calm, but my hands were shaking. I turned the ignition, hoping maybe the noise would make them back off. As soon as my headlights came on, the van's brake lights lit up. Still, it didn't move. It was like a sick standoff. I put the car in reverse just to see if they'd flinch, but there was no room. They had me pinned, and it felt more and more like that was the whole point. Right then, my manager texted back, "Yeah, I'm still in the kitchen. Everything okay?" I didn't even respond. I just called her. The second she picked up, I didn't even say hi, I just said, "Can you come outside right now? Please." I must have sounded freaked out because she didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm coming." And the craziest part, the second I said the word outside, the van started moving again. Slowly at first, then it turned slightly to the left like it was going to drive off. But it didn't. It stopped again about 20 feet away, still in the lot, engine still running. They were watching, waiting, like they were deciding if it was worth sticking around. When my manager finally came out through the back door, I'd never been so relieved to see someone in my life. She looked confused at first, but the second she noticed the van, her whole expression changed. I rolled my window down just enough to say, "That van's been sitting behind me. Blocked me in. No plate." She didn't say anything, just pulled her phone out and pointed it toward the van like she was taking a photo. And just like that, it took off. No screeching tires or anything dramatic, just turned out of the lot and disappeared down the street. The timing was so perfect it felt rehearsed. I remember feeling this weird mix of relief and terror, like, okay, it's gone, but what the hell was that? We stood there for a few minutes, not really talking. I didn't even get out of the car. She just kept looking in the direction the van had gone, like she was trying to memorize something. After a bit, she told me to wait while she went back inside to check the security cameras. I didn't want to be alone, but I wasn't about to follow her in and leave my car either. While she was gone, I kept staring at the spot where the van had been. I even started second-guessing if I'd imagined how intense it all was. But then I looked down and realized I was still shaking. My hand was still clutching my keys like a weapon, and my leg was bouncing like I'd just had 5 cups of coffee. When she came back out, her face was pale. She said the cameras didn't catch anything, literally nothing. No footage of the van pulling in, no sign of it blocking me in, no trace of it leaving. Just empty frames. She even showed me on her phone. It jumped from a frame of me walking to my car to a frame of me already sitting inside with the engine on. Like the van never existed. I couldn't believe it. We both stood there in silence for a second, trying to process it. She kept saying it didn't make sense, and I kept replaying the moment in my head over and over again, thinking, how could it not be on camera? I saw it. She saw it. It was there. I didn't even drive home right away. I sat there for at least 15 more minutes, trying to breathe normally again. Every car that passed by made me jump. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting the van to come back. Eventually, I got the courage to pull out and head home, but I took a different route. I kept looking behind me at every red light, convinced I was being followed. Nothing happened, thankfully, but I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there with every light on in my apartment, listening for van engines outside. I reported it to the police the next morning, but without a plate, a face, or even camera footage, there wasn't much they could do. They took my statement and told me to be careful walking to my car at night. No shit. It's been months since that night, and I still think about it way too often. I changed my schedule so I never close anymore, and I park as close to the door as I can. I even got one of those little keychain alarms and a flashlight stun gun, just in case. But nothing has ever happened again. No one's come back. No other employees have seen anything weird. It's like it was a one-time thing, but that's what freaks me out the most. Whoever was in that van, they planned it. They waited. They picked a time when I'd be alone, knew the lot would be empty, knew the cameras wouldn't catch them. It wasn't random. That's what I can't shake. I never got answers. And honestly, I don't think I ever will. The van just vanished the way it came. No plate, no trace, no reason. It's like it only existed for that moment, to scare me or worse. I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't locked my doors fast enough. If my manager hadn't picked up. If I'd gotten out of the car to say something. It all haunts me in this really quiet way. And that feeling, that someone watched me for who knows how long, waited for the perfect moment, and then just left like nothing happened, that never really goes away. I wasn't even planning to sell the laptop that day. It was just one of those spontaneous decisions. I listed it on the app without thinking too much. It was an old MacBook, still working fine, just sitting in my closet since I got a new one. Within an hour, some guy messaged me. No profile picture, super generic name, but he was polite and straight to the point. He said he lived nearby and could stop by that same afternoon. Since it was broad daylight and the neighborhood was familiar to me, I agreed. He sent the address casually, like he was just doing a normal errand. Said he only wanted to plug it in and make sure it worked. Totally reasonable. I got to the place around 4 p.m. It was a quiet residential street, regular-looking house, low gate, nothing sketchy. He was already outside waiting, wearing a black t-shirt, scruffy beard, looked younger than I expected, maybe early 30s. He greeted me with a smile, took the laptop from my hands, and said he'd just test it real quick. The front outlet's busted, let's go to the garage, I've got a workbench there. It didn't seem weird at the time. The garage door was halfway open, and I followed him inside without thinking twice. As soon as we stepped in, he pressed something in his pocket. The door started to close slowly, and I only realized how quiet it was when it finally shut completely. The first thing I noticed was how dim it was inside. The only light came from a single bulb hanging above the workbench, casting this weird yellow glow that didn't reach the corners of the garage. It smelled like old oil and dust, that thick, stale kind of air that makes you want to clear your throat. He didn't say much after the door shut, just walked over to the bench and started plugging in the charger like everything was normal. I pulled out my phone to check the time, or maybe send a quick message, and that's when I saw it. No signal. Not a single bar. I moved around a little, thinking maybe it was just interference or something, but nothing. It was like the garage swallowed the signal entirely. I tried to play it cool, but something felt really off. I asked casually, "Hey, this won't take long, right?" And he just nodded without looking at me, focused on the laptop booting up. Then I noticed how cluttered the garage was, not in a messy way, but like intentional. Tools lined up perfectly, nothing out of place, and there was a tarp over something large in the corner. I don't know why, but that tarp gave me a weird feeling. My gut started tightening. I kept glancing toward the garage door, wondering if I should ask him to open it a bit to let some air in. But I didn't. I just stood there, pretending to be calm while every instinct in me was screaming that something was wrong. A few more minutes passed, and he still hadn't said a word. He just kept clicking around on the laptop like he was doing a full system check or something. I wasn't even sure what he was looking for. He hadn't asked for the password, hadn't tried to log in. Just moving the cursor around, opening random apps. I was standing there trying not to panic, but every little sound in that garage felt louder than it should. The hum of the bulb, the creak of the wooden bench under his elbow. It was like my senses were on overdrive. I kept checking my phone like an idiot, hoping a bar of signal would magically appear. Nothing. Then, out of nowhere, he turned to me and said, "This is a good machine." I nodded, forcing a smile, and said something like, "Yeah, it served me well." He just kept looking at me for a second too long. Not smiling, not blinking. Then he turned back to the laptop. That moment, that stare, it rattled me. I started thinking, maybe I should just ask him to open the door, say I had to go. But I felt stuck. Not physically, but mentally. Like saying anything would shift the energy in the room into something worse. I've never felt that kind of pressure in my chest before, like my body was warning me, but I couldn't act. I finally worked up the nerve to say, "Hey man, I really gotta get going soon." He didn't respond right away, just closed the laptop slowly and set it down on the bench. Then he said, "Yeah, sure," but his tone was off, flat, almost annoyed. He walked over to the wall, supposedly to open the garage door, and I actually felt some relief for a second. But instead of hitting the door switch, he stopped at a shelf and started rummaging through a drawer. I couldn't see what he was looking for, and he didn't say anything. That's when I really started to feel it, panic creeping up my throat. My hands were sweating, heart racing, and my mind was going a million miles an hour, trying to make sense of what the hell was happening. I took a small step back, just instinctively, and my heel hit something behind me, a metal toolbox or some piece of equipment. The sound made him whip his head around fast, like I'd caught his attention in the wrong way. He stared at me again, this time without any expression at all, and I swear, in that split second, I thought I wasn't getting out of there. I blurted out, "Hey, can you open the door?" trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't move at first, just kept his eyes on me. Then he finally walked over and pressed the button, and the door started rising slowly. That moment felt like it lasted forever. I could see the sunlight creeping in, and I knew I had to move. The second the door opened high enough, I didn't wait. I grabbed the laptop from the bench, didn't even ask, didn't care, and walked straight out. I didn't run, but my legs were tense, like they were ready to bolt if anything happened. I could feel him watching me the whole way, but he didn't say a word. Didn't try to stop me, just stood there in the garage doorway with that same blank face. I got in my car and locked the doors immediately, my hands shaking so bad I fumbled the keys twice. When I finally started the engine, I didn't even look back, I just drove. I didn't exhale until I was at least 5 blocks away. Once I was out of that neighborhood, I pulled over to check my phone again. Full bars. Messages coming in. It was like nothing had happened, except I couldn't shake that feeling. Something about that garage, that guy, the way he acted, it wasn't right. I've met plenty of people through apps like that, sold tons of stuff, but this was different. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't said anything? What if I'd waited too long to ask him to open the door? I've replayed it in my head 100 times, and there's no good explanation. He didn't threaten me. He didn't touch me. But everything in me says I was in danger. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment made me jump. I kept checking the locks, staring at my phone, trying to convince myself it was just a weird interaction, that maybe I overreacted. But the truth is, I've never had that kind of gut feeling before, and I've learned to trust it. I even tried looking him up through the app, but the listing was gone. His profile? Deleted. No history, no messages. Like he vanished. I reported the incident to the platform, but without anything concrete, it didn't go anywhere. Just a vague warning I left in the review section before his account disappeared completely. To this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't spoken up. If I had waited even a few minutes longer. There's no closure to it, nothing ever came of it. No follow-up, no news, no stories about anyone else. Just this one moment that started off like any other, and ended with me driving away from a garage I should have never stepped into. I don't have a neat explanation, No supernatural twist or dramatic escape. It was just real and quiet and wrong. And it still sticks with me, that feeling, that if I'd stayed in that room just a little longer, I might not be here writing this right now. I still think about that night more often than I'd like to admit. It happened 2 years ago, during a camping trip with a group of close friends. There were 6 of us, me, my girlfriend at the time, and 4 other friends. We had driven out to this spot in the woods that one of them knew from childhood. It wasn't an official campsite or anything, just a clearing not too far from a lake, deep enough in the woods that we wouldn't hear a single car or see another person. The first part of the day was normal. We set up tents, cooked over a little portable stove, laughed, drank. Everything was good until night fell. Around 8 or 9 p.m., we realized we were running low on firewood. It had gotten colder than expected, and the fire was our only real source of warmth. One of the guys, Daniel, offered to go grab more wood. He wasn't drunk, maybe just a beer or 2, and he said he'd just walk a little bit into the trees where we'd seen some fallen branches earlier. He had his flashlight and said he'd be quick. It didn't seem like a big deal at all. I remember we kept talking and joking around the fire for a while, not even noticing how much time had passed. It was only when I looked at my phone and realized it had been over 30 minutes that I started to feel off. We started calling out for him, at first casually, just yelling his name and laughing, thinking maybe he got distracted or was trying to mess with us. But as more time passed, the joking stopped. We grabbed a couple of flashlights and spread out a little around the campsite, not too far, just to check if he was nearby. Nothing. No footsteps, no twigs snapping, no response. It was like he'd vanished. No one wanted to say it out loud, but we were all starting to get nervous. You could feel it in the silence. Everyone getting quieter, eyes darting into the dark, pretending not to be worried. It was maybe an hour later when his girlfriend, Julia, spotted something. She pointed into a darker patch between the trees and said someone was standing there. We walked over, and there was Daniel, just standing still, staring straight into the woods. And when I say still, I mean like completely frozen. His arms were hanging by his sides, his flashlight was on the ground, turned off, and he wasn't reacting at all. We called his name, shook his shoulder, even shouted, but nothing. His eyes were wide open, not like he was scared, more like he was empty. Like he wasn't really there. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. We didn't know what to do. Julia started crying, and one of the guys kept asking if we should call someone, like the park rangers or even the cops. But we were deep in the woods with barely any signal, and honestly, none of us knew exactly where we were on a map. Eventually, we decided to just get him back to the campsite and figure things out in the morning. 2 of us grabbed him under the arms and basically dragged him back. He didn't resist, but he didn't walk on his own either. He just moved with us, still completely blank. No blinking, no speaking. It felt like carrying a mannequin. Back at the camp, we sat him down by the fire, hoping the light or the warmth would do something. Nothing changed. He just stared straight ahead, like he couldn't even see what was in front of him. We tried giving him water, tried asking him simple questions, nothing. It was like he was on pause. We ended up sitting in a weird, tense silence for hours. No one went to bed. We were too freaked out. People whispered theories, trying to make sense of it. Maybe he ate something, maybe he had a seizure or some kind of mental break. But none of it made sense. He hadn't been acting weird at all before he went into the woods. Not even a little. Sometime around 4 or 5 in the morning, he finally moved. No warning, he just blinked a few times, looked around like he was confused, and asked why everyone was staring at him. We all kind of jumped when he spoke. Julia practically launched herself at him, crying and asking if he was okay, but he looked completely lost. We started bombarding him with questions. What happened, where he went, what he saw. And he just kept saying he didn't remember anything. Said he only remembered going to get firewood, and then nothing. Like a cut in a movie. Next thing he knew, he was back at the camp, with all of us staring like he had 3 heads. We thought maybe he was lying or embarrassed or covering something up. But the more he talked, or tried to, the more obvious it was that he was being honest. He looked genuinely freaked out, like he was trying to piece something together that just wasn't there. And his voice was shaky in a way I've never heard from him before. The rest of us didn't know how to deal with it. We packed up early that morning, before the sun was fully out. Nobody really talked on the way back. It was like we all silently agreed not to push him anymore, or maybe we were just too creeped out ourselves. That feeling, that heaviness, stayed with me for days. A few days later, I tried bringing it up again when I was alone with him. We were just hanging out at my place, playing video games like usual, and I asked, gently, if anything had come back to him. He got really quiet. Then he said something that honestly made my stomach drop. He told me that ever since that night, he's been having these weird dreams. Not nightmares, exactly, but super vivid. Always the same setting, trees. And in every dream, he's standing in the woods, not moving, just staring. Sometimes he hears something breathing behind him. Sometimes he swears there's something just out of view. But he never turns around. What messed with me the most is when he said, "It doesn't feel like a dream. It feels like I'm back there." I didn't even know how to respond to that. I've heard of stress dreams, sure, but this felt different. And to be honest, I started having trouble sleeping too. Not because of nightmares, but because I couldn't stop thinking about that look on his face when we found him. That empty stare, like something had turned off inside him. I kept trying to rationalize it, but nothing made sense. The place we were in wasn't known for anything weird. He didn't have any mental health issues. It was like something reached out and touched him, just for a second, and then let him go. About a week after the trip, I got a call from Julia late at night. She sounded shaken and asked if I had a minute. She told me Daniel had started sleepwalking. It had happened twice already, both times around 3 a.m. She'd wake up and find him standing at the back door of their apartment, just staring out the window, completely unresponsive. She said the first time, she thought he was just zoning out, but when she tried to guide him back to bed, he didn't even seem to notice her. The second time, she said his hand was on the doorknob like he was about to open it. When she asked what he was doing, he whispered, "I have to go back." That was the moment she realized something was seriously wrong. After that, she made him see a doctor. They ran some basic tests, but nothing came up. No signs of trauma, no neurological issues, nothing that would explain the memory loss or the sleepwalking. He even had a sleep study done, and they said everything looked within normal range. Which honestly made it worse, because if nothing's wrong, then what the hell happened out there? At this point, all of us from that trip had kind of drifted apart. No one wanted to talk about it. Whenever we tried, it was like this heavy silence would take over the room. Like the air got thicker. I know that sounds dramatic, but I swear something about that night just stuck to us. To this day, Daniel still says he has no memory of what happened. He avoids talking about that night completely now. If someone brings it up, he just gets quiet and changes the subject. And honestly, I don't blame him. I've replayed that night in my head so many times, trying to catch some detail we missed, something that could explain it. But it's always the same sequence, him leaving with a flashlight, the time passing way too fast, and then finding him just standing there blank like he'd been unplugged. There's no explanation. No strange sounds, no lights, nothing out of the ordinary, except him. What haunts me isn't just what happened, it's how it stopped. Like something just let him go when it was done. No warning, no reason. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever touched him that night is still out there. Watching. Waiting. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I catch myself staring into the dark corners of my apartment, half expecting to see someone standing there, completely still, eyes wide open, staring into nothing. And I swear, every once in a while, I dream of the woods too. I moved into this apartment about a month ago. It's a small one-bedroom on the second floor of an older building, not the nicest place, but it was all I could afford after a rough breakup and switching jobs. I was honestly just glad to have a space to myself. The first couple of weeks were fine, quiet neighbors, no weird smells from the hallway, and just enough natural light in the morning to make it feel somewhat cozy. I didn't know anyone in the building, but I didn't really mind. I liked the peace. That's probably why I noticed the knocking right away. It started on a Thursday night, close to 2 a.m. I was already in bed, half asleep, when I heard 3 distinct knocks on my front door. Not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. I froze. Who the hell knocks at that time? I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing. It didn't happen again that night, and I convinced myself it was maybe a neighbor messing around, or someone drunk knocking on the wrong door. But then it happened again the next night. Same time. Same pattern, 3 calm, spaced out knocks. This time, I got up slowly and tiptoed to the door. I didn't say anything, didn't make a sound. I just stood there, holding my breath. I didn't look through the peephole. I don't know why, but something about it felt off. After maybe a full minute of silence, I turned around and went back to bed, trying to pretend it didn't shake me. But the next morning, when I opened the door to go to work, I noticed something small but weird. My doormat, it was flipped upside down, perfectly rotated, 180 degrees. At first, I thought maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I had accidentally kicked the doormat when I left the day before, or some draft caught it, though that made no real sense. Still, I flipped it back, shrugged it off, and tried not to let my imagination spiral. But by the fourth night in a row, the knocking became something I started to dread. Always the same, 3 soft knocks around 2 a.m. I started staying up just to see if it would happen again, and it always did. I finally got the courage to look through the peephole. I remember my hand was actually shaking as I reached for it, but when I looked, there was no one there. Just the hallway, dimly lit by the weak overhead light. Completely empty. That might have been the most unsettling part. The building isn't huge, and you can always hear footsteps echoing through the halls, even if someone's being quiet. But after the knocks, nothing. No footsteps. No sound of someone walking away. Just total silence, like whoever did it vanished right after knocking. I checked the doormat again the next morning, and yep, it was flipped again. Always the same way, like someone was trying to send a message, but in the most bizarre, subtle way possible. I even set up my phone to record one night, thinking I'd catch whoever was doing it, but the video just showed silence. No knocks, no shadow under the door. But when I checked the mat in the morning, it was flipped. That's when I decided to talk to the front desk. The guy at the main office was polite, but clearly not interested in doing much. I asked if there were any cameras in the hallway. There weren't. Just one in the lobby and one outside by the parking lot. Figures. I mentioned the knocks and the flipped doormat, hoping maybe he'd say it was a prank or something normal. But he just gave me this weird look and said, "You're in 2B, right?" I nodded, and he hesitated before telling me that unit had been empty for a while before I moved in. Apparently, it had been unofficially occupied, as he put it. Squatters. For months. They'd only cleared it out about 3 weeks before I signed the lease. He said it like it was no big deal, like it happened all the time. But I couldn't stop thinking about that. Someone had lived in there, illegally, for a long time. Someone who knew the ins and outs of that unit better than I did. I couldn't shake the thought that whoever had been there before me, maybe they weren't completely gone. It didn't help that I started hearing noises inside the apartment too. Not loud, but subtle things. The soft creak of the kitchen floor when I was in the bedroom. A drawer that seemed slightly open when I was sure I'd closed it. I even convinced myself that maybe I was just being paranoid, that I was making things worse in my head. But then one night, around 1:50 a.m., I was in the living room with all the lights off, just sitting and waiting. I don't even know what I expected to see. When the knocking started again, 3 slow knocks, I jumped, even though I'd been expecting it. I ran to the door and looked through the peephole immediately this time. And again, there was nothing there. But when I opened the door right after, just a few seconds later, there was a small, crumpled piece of newspaper on top of the doormat. It was an old classified page, yellowed and torn at the edges, like it had been ripped out of some local paper from years ago. I brought it inside and unfolded it, and I swear, I had this weird feeling in my chest the whole time, like I was doing something I wasn't supposed to. Most of the page was typical junk, furniture ads, job listings, and stuff for sale. But one section was circled in red ink, really shaky, almost like it had been drawn with a trembling hand. It was a tiny rental listing for this exact apartment. 2B, utilities included, quiet corner unit, no background check needed. It didn't have a date on it, but something about it gave me the creeps. I didn't know what to make of it. Was someone trying to remind me that this place had once been claimed by someone else? That I didn't really belong here? I called my sister that morning and told her everything. She suggested I stay at her place for a few days, just to clear my head. I packed a bag, but before I left, I went back to the door and looked at the doormat one more time. It was flipped again. I hadn't even heard the knock that night, like they knew I was leaving and didn't need to knock anymore. I took a picture of it, I don't know why, maybe to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. When I showed it to the front desk guy later, just hoping to get some kind of reaction, he just glanced at it and muttered something like, "You're not the first." I asked him what he meant, but he just walked away like he'd said too much. That's when it really sunk in. Whatever was happening, it had happened before. I stayed at my sister's place for 3 nights. Slept like a rock, no knocks, no weird sounds, no stress. But the whole time, I kept thinking about that apartment. It was like it had some kind of pull on me, like I needed to go back and face it, even if I didn't know what it was. On the 4th night, I went back. Everything looked normal from the outside. Door locked, nothing strange on the floor. I tried to tell myself that maybe it had all just been stress, that I'd let my mind go wild from being alone too much. But when I opened the door and stepped inside, I felt it again, that heaviness in the air. Like the apartment wasn't empty, like something was waiting. I checked every room, every corner, even the closet and under the bed. Nothing. Still, I left the hallway light on that night and kept my shoes on, just in case. Around 2:05 a.m., the knocks came again. 3 of them, same rhythm. My heart jumped so hard I nearly dropped the glass I was holding. I stood there frozen in the living room, just staring at the door. I already knew there'd be nothing through the peephole, but I looked anyway. Empty hallway. But when I turned to walk back into the apartment, I heard something that made my stomach drop. A slow creak, like wood bending under pressure, coming from the bedroom. I hadn't even been in there since I came back. I crept over, every step making the floor feel like it was going to betray me with a loud creak. The door was slightly open, just enough to see inside. Nothing moved, but the window was unlocked, wide open. I know I'd locked it before I left. I shut the window and locked it again, but my hands were shaking the whole time. I barely slept that night, just laid there with the lights on, staring at the ceiling and flinching at every little sound. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When it finally did, I called the building maintenance to check the window locks, just to feel like I was doing something about it. The guy who came was maybe in his late 50s, super quiet, barely said a word as he looked around. But right as he was about to leave, he stopped and looked at me kind of funny. He asked, "You the one in 2B?" I said yeah, and he gave this tired sigh like he already knew what I was gonna say. Then he goes, "People used to hear stuff from that unit even when it was supposed to be empty. Not the first time someone's complained." I asked him what he meant, and he just shrugged like he didn't want to get involved. But before he left, he turned back and said, "They found signs someone had been living in the crawl space under the building, real close to your unit. Could have been months before anyone noticed." I just stood there, trying to process that. Someone had been under the building, maybe even while I was living there. I remembered the faint sounds at night, the feeling of being watched, the flipped mat. None of it felt random anymore. I checked under my bed, in the closet, even behind the shower curtain for the 10th time. Nothing. But I didn't feel safe anymore. I didn't feel alone either. It felt like whoever had been there before me had never really left, like they were still claiming the space in their own way. That same night, I pushed a chair in front of the door and sat there with a kitchen knife in my hand. I wasn't even trying to be dramatic. I was just done feeling helpless. I kept all the lights on, even the ones in the bathroom and hallway. Hours passed. Nothing. I almost started to believe that maybe it was over. Around 3 a.m., I dozed off right there in the chair. I don't know how long I was out, but something woke me up. Not a sound, not a knock, just this deep feeling that I wasn't alone. I looked toward the door, and the chair was pushed aside. Not fallen, just moved. And the doormat? Flipped. Again. But this time, there was something under it. I crouched down and lifted it with a trembling hand. It was a torn photo, just the corner of one. It showed part of someone's face. An eye, half a nose, and a date written on the back. The same month I moved in. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. I packed everything I could into 2 bags, left the rest, and walked out without looking back. I didn't even lock the door. I crashed at my sister's again, and broke the lease a few days later, paid the fee, didn't care. It's been months since I left, and nothing weird has happened since. But I still think about that place. About how quiet it was. How calculated. Whoever, or whatever, it was never tried to hurt me. It just wanted me to know it was there. That it saw me. That it still saw that apartment as its. And the worst part, sometimes I wonder if I'd stayed one more night, if the knocks would have stopped, or if something else would have started. I never figured out who left those knocks. No one was ever caught. No answers, no follow-up from the building, nothing. Just silence, like it all never happened. But I know what I felt. I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, when everything's quiet and I'm lying in bed in my new place, I swear I still feel that same pressure in the air. The kind that makes you hold your breath and listen. Not because something's there, but because something used to be. And maybe it never really goes away. Maybe some places hold on to people longer than they should. Or maybe some people never let go.